Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ray, and welcome to the RayWenderlich.com podcast. In this podcast, we'll keep you up to date with the latest app development tech talk. Now, here are your hosts, Dru Freeman and Nishant Shrivastava.
Thanks, Ray. This is the RayWenderlich.com podcast. Welcome to episode 3 for season 11. This episode was recorded on Monday, the 21st of December, 2020. Happy holidays to all of you. For release on the 6th of January. This episode is sponsored by the language Swift and by the number -sign of 1.5 pi. I'm Dru Freeman with my no-nonsense co-host, Nishant Shrivastava.
Thanks, Dru. In this episode, we continue our quest of picking up gems from the book Living by the Code and talk with Marcin Kryzanowski, who is an Apple platform developer in the desktop and mobile domain, as well as he's an active contributor to open source with many known projects like CryptoSwift, ObjectivePGP, and many more.
Marcin, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm here to talk about the book, but mostly about what changed between the time when the book was written and now, right? Because that was quite some time.
To start with, Marcin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a developer, so it's quite boring. Lately, I'm into iOS Apple ecosystem. I used to work on a Microsoft stack, then I transitioned to the iPhone stack, and just recently I'm doing more into like Mac applications. But I'm doing a lot of stuff. Like really, I did some web in the past. I kind of like to think about me as an engineer, so I can use any tool, but I'm not. But I like to think about myself like that.
Yeah, the right tool for the right job, and when you find a tool that interests you, you migrate toward it.
Yes, yeah, that would be great if we had this freedom to work like that, right? Like, I have some experience with Linux that gives me this base, this foundation to work with a lot of current tools, you know, like developer tools. And then I transitioned to all that GUI environments, of course. But yeah, this base with the command. I feel I'm comfortable with the command line tools, right? So I can choose one of that tool to actually work for me when the editor just can't, right? I like it. Yeah, it would be great to work on any tool you want, but most of the job requirements, they specify this tool. You have to know this thing to do the job, right?
Well, I strongly believe that a lot of those job postings are, we lost somebody and here's everything he worked with. So we want somebody to come in and pick up everything that person did.
Yeah. But then they have to do some listing, and you read that listing, and it's just ridiculous, right?
Well, usually they always start with, must have. We're looking for an iOS programmer. Must have 3 years of Xcode, and it's just like,
yeah,
no.
There was this joke about when the Swift came out, and was like, the recruiter already sent you an invite and asked for 5 years of experience in Swift.
I remember interviewing for a job just after Java had come out. I wasn't interviewing for the job in Java, but the guy next to me was like, well, what should I put down? 4 or 5 years of Java? And I'm like, did you work for Sun? And he said, who's that? I said, put down 7.
Yeah. Did he get the job?
I don't know, and I don't want to know. If he did, I'm going to feel horrible.
I also heard the stories about people who apply for a job, they get a job somehow, and they just learn while they were doing the job, and that's legit. Like if you experience in any other tool that is similar, you can just pick up very quickly in a week or two. You pick up on some tool. You won't get of course the deep understanding maybe, but you can do just a gig. If that's just a gig.
Tell me, what was it that motivated you to move from Microsoft over to the Apple stack?
So I work in this Microsoft stack. It was on the enterprise solutions. So that was quite quite boring. Maybe it was interesting to some extent, but it was a business-to-business application. So there was a lot of financial. I learned about finance. I learned about warehouse, how it works from the corporate perspective. But then, yeah, I needed change. After a few years, I just was looking for something else. And then the iPhone came out, and I got iBook. And for some time, I carry 2 laptops to my work. So I had a Windows one to do my day job, and the iBook to do where I had all my personal stuff. So that wasn't that convenient. And at some point, this friend of mine asked me, do you want to join me on some startups? And I did. I transitioned in my free time. I started when the SDK came out. Yeah, I downloaded that and just tried to play with that. So I learned Objective-C, and there was first opportunity to change the job. I was like, okay, yeah, why not? Yeah, I think I'm ready. And I was senior already. I started as a senior because why not?
Well, there's so much room above senior. There's like senior, and
yeah, I'm
senior
kidding.
lead, and
I'm kidding. Like I was senior as a programmer. That was because I had like I don't know 7 years of experience or so. So I was senior enough. But in the iOS development, I was junior. I was definitely junior. But there was a small team, and I was okay with like learning while doing. And we actually did a great job. That didn't get much traction, but yeah, the work was great.
So once you got into the Apple platform, when did some of these open source projects come along?
After some time, I was always somehow in open source because I was in the Linux. I was in the Linux environment. I don't know, community. I was in the Linux community, local Polish community. I don't think it still exists, but there was a Polish Linux distribution, PLD. Like, I don't know if anyone outside Poland know about it, but there was. And I was into that development group. So I was really into that. I liked the GNOME. I had my opinions about what you should use, Vim and so on. So I was into open source. I knew the open source from the almost beginning. The Stallman, what he's saying, what's going on. There was SourceForge. I believe that was the website back then. So I was there. Then I went to this more corporate site where there's no open source. At that time, Microsoft was the bad company that they didn't have a GitHub account.
Everything was closed source, yes.
Well, if I remember correctly, that was during the time that if Microsoft couldn't own it, they'd duplicate it.
Yeah, I think they still do that. Although, I have a story about it. But yeah, I think they do that. Yeah, and so I was there, but it was on a site. And then I go to the iOS, and you know how it works on iOS? It was the time of GitHub already. So everything was on the GitHub. I was looking for a piece of code. I find it, so I started first myself, make a pull request or start or some small changes here and there, and eventually I started to create my own projects. The first one that still exists is this CryptoSwift library.
I was just going to ask, could you explain CryptoSwift? Just a quick description of what it is.
CryptoSwift is a Swift implementation of some of the cryptography algorithms, like not synchronous. I always use this word wrong. Symmetric cryptography. The symmetric asymmetric is synchronous, asynchronous, and I use it wrong. Yeah, symmetric cryptography. Like AES, you know, the cipher. But I started with a digest, like a hash function, SHA, MDA5, right?
Yeah.
When I started the project, it was wrapper around the, I think, OpenSSL or the Common Crypto library that is in iOS. But I had some time, some free evenings, and I was just curious, you know, what's inside. And Swift was still young. It was in the early days of Swift. So I was like, oh, okay, how it is implemented, how it works. So maybe I can implement that. So I started reading the papers and implemented one, and second, another, and eventually some suite of algorithms. And the idea was to build that in Swift to see how Swift can be performant. You know, to learn about the limitations about the Swift itself. The CryptoSwift has some limitations, like the performance is one of it. And it's not everything I can overcome with the code because, well, the Swift runtime and the compiler has the limitations that you can't just overcome, right? It's just, it is how it is. I spent a lot of evenings trying to learn about that. I was in touch with some Swift compiler engineers, you know, just on the Twitter, and asking a lot of questions and debugging. And I improved the code base, like the runtime performance a lot, but it's still way slower. Like there's AES, you know, cipher that normally, well, not normally, but it has a hardware acceleration, like in CPU. There's some instructions I cannot use because there's no direct invocation of assembler from Swift. And the other, a lot of problem. There's a problem with the memory allocation. So I had to reduce a lot of Swift code and just rewrite it to dumb, you know, piece of code that only does simple loop on the array or just malloc, you know, the array of bytes. Otherwise, the constant allocation, deallocation was very, very expensive. And there's in a crypto algorithm, there's a characteristic that there's small loops that operates on some data, like a 10,000 or I don't know, 60,000 invocations of one loop, right? And it takes some time. And on top of that, sorry, can I speak up with this performance, Swift performance? It's like something I like, really like. Talk about Swift. Swift has a very bad performance in a debug build. You know, this build when you work normally, when you work on an application and you just run, it's very slow. It's like 100 times slower than the release build. I was not aware of that in the beginning. I learned that hard way. So basically users just started to report and say, oh, this is so slow. It takes like 3 or 4 seconds. It shouldn't take that long. I was like, oh, really? It takes 4 seconds. Like the operation shouldn't take 4 seconds. But if you build in the release, it's a fraction of a second, the very same code. That would be easy to overcome, to fix, if I could somehow provide users with the optimized version of the library, but I can't. I have just sources, right? And they import that sources with the CocoaPods, Carthage. What's the pronunciation of that?
Carthage.
Carthage, yeah. Or SPM, Swift Packet Manager. And it's not up to me, up to tools, how they build that and integrate with the project. So I would like to say something in my specification, this manifest file, build this code, in an optimized way. But there's not really something I can do. So if you integrate with the CocoaPods and you build your app normally in a debug configuration, it will be slow because the pod is also built in this debug mode. The same with the Swift Packet Manager and the Cartridge. So the only option is to distribute binary, right? Until I don't know, this year, I think, I could only do that with the Cartridge because they have option to pre-build, they call it cache, pre-build the binary, so the Cartridge just download and use. Not really with the CocoaPods. For the CocoaPods, I can just hack it and add a custom options, that modify the project. But it was not option for the SPM, Swift Packet Manager, because it worked only with the sources, right? So it get the sources built and that's all. And just recently, they added with the Swift 5.3, I believe, right?
Right.
Yeah, 0.2? No, 0.3.
0.3 just released.
Yeah. They added this binary distribution option, so I started to use that, but there's a story about that. There's a lot of problems with that.
Seems like you have to jump through a lot of hoops and different problems while building this CryptoSwift package. But what I'm going to jump back to the base here, because I see this package is kind of like targeting platforms, iOS, Android, macOS, watchOS, tvOS, and Linux. So my question though is to maybe touch upon the point where how did you see this difference in the ecosystem for open source because you started as a Linux developer in the open source, right? And then you slowly moved into this iOS version, I guess, or Apple ecosystem. So how would you maybe talk a little bit about how the ecosystem has changed a little bit for you?
From a technical point of view, the Swift on Linux is different than Swift on macOS, right? One is maintained, the other one is not, it's maintained in a different way. The community mostly exists on a Apple platform side, not really on a Linux side, because I believe Swift is still has this tag that this is iOS language. This is not a general purpose system language. It's just something to build iOS apps. So nobody really used that for any other purpose. Also, the fact that Swift on server is not that popular is not helping with that. We had this, when the Swift started, they said we partner with IBM and we're going to build this enterprise something for Swift on server and stuff. Yeah, and we get the Kitura and Vapor that is still going on, and Kitura is shut down by IBM. So everyone was like, oh, what's now? This really Swift is not a priority, or will it stay only on the desktop, or what's going on with that? So nobody's convinced that should use Swift as a main language on Linux, right? I think that's my opinion, and the balance is not even. So there's a lot of work put to work great on the Apple platform, but there's less work to have it great on the Linux. It kind of changed a bit but still.
Apple hasn't really put up the signs to say we bless this yet.
Yeah.
Apple continually talks about Swift on iOS, and they've talked about Swift Package Manager, but there has not really been a general, let's talk about Swift on the server. And I
Yeah.
think that until Apple goes there, that it's still more of a niche technology. But I mean, it's going to be the same way. I mean, Google's the same way on certain technologies, until it's blessed for Android, it's a niche technology, but.
That's true. We'll see. Well, we still don't have a product that is blessed and is like a show up for the Swift on server.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Vapor, and everything is around the Vapor. So this is one framework that is successful in this environment, and everything else is just either not maintained or on a low piece maintained. Apple, they recently, and I think in the last year or something, they started to release some of the components for the Swift server, like a server balancing, or but we don't know what is the purpose, who asked for that. We didn't ask for that, they released, right? Then they release something new, something next, and maybe there is a picture they have in mind, we just don't know that yet, and it will all come together. There's HTTP server, there's some balancing, so some metrics. I don't know, maybe they start use it internally, who knows? And then, yeah, it makes sense. Maybe they do already. There was a problem with the static linking on a Swift on Linux. Static linking is helps with the portability, not portability, with the how to deploy some program application on the server, so it's in a one binary, and that was a problem for a long time, unsolved, because nobody cares. Why nobody cares? Because on macOS that's not the case. Swift does not support static linking. That's by design. But on Linux, it kind of does at some point, and then break, and nobody fixed that. But recently, it was like 2 months ago or something, there was they merged a patch that fixed that. So maybe they need it for something, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe as the community finds more bugs and as the community uses it more, they'll find needs to correct things internally and move it forward. I want to shift this slightly, because I would love to talk to you about ObjectivePGP and the online Swift playground and all of that. But I want to talk about some of what you spoke about concerning what it's like to manage open source, and how that's really not going to be your primary career track.
Unfortunately, I wish it could be, but it's not. So I tried different approach to that. So I have this CryptoSwift. Like I have, let's say, two libraries. One is CryptoSwift, and the other one is ObjectivePGP. CryptoSwift is open source, MIT, I think, I believe it's MIT license, so everyone can use, and people use it freely. And there's OpenPGP that is ObjectivePGP, OpenPGP implementation in Objective-C. That is distributed in dual license, free for free apps and paid for commercial use. So I tried like a two approach. One is everything goes for free, and the other one is
pay for commercial.
Yeah, and I sold a few licenses of the ObjectivePGP, but it's not enough to to live out of that. But the amount of work I had to put in ObjectivePGP was way bigger than in CryptoSwift, just in comparison. Both projects are very demanding from how much time I had, because I don't do that all the time, but I had to put into those projects. And it's not really paying the bills. I asked, the simple thing, I asked the CryptoSwift, the free one, I asked, okay, if you use that, just put some acknowledgement in the documentation that you use that library.
Mhm.
Nobody reads the license, really. And I even
Yeah.
put that in the README that, look, this is, I just ask you to put that, and nobody does that.
I have an app I wrote myself for myself, and I knew that I was going to have an entire call out section for all my open source libraries, because it's like, I'm a programmer writing this thing and I know what programmers put. I'm not commercial, so I want everybody to get the credit they deserve.
Yeah, and one day I remember I felt festive, and I found some big company that used my library in the application. I checked the credits, and it was not there. And I wrote to them like email and said, I ask you, you either pay me or, I was like, and they was like, oh, sorry, yeah, we will update. Okay.
Did they ever update?
I didn't follow. I guess so. But I asked for contribution like $25 a year. They could just do that, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't really.
It's
work.
amazing that open source, which was originally supposed to create an entire economy out of support and documentation and teaching, none of that's there. None of that ever came to fruition.
Some of the projects, yes. I mean, we all know. I don't know, Node.js. I think it's a company backed project, right? And they get some money. Mozilla, I believe, they also, there's this foundation they built, like the whole company around that. There's some projects in the JavaScript community that get some funding, but it's really niche. It's niche. I don't think this is any major movement. Most of the people publish their work just to show off, show their work, and that's fine. That's great until you have time to work on that. It's awesome, but at some point you don't, and what you're gonna do about it?
I mean, yeah, it's great that you can basically say, I did this, so hire me.
Yeah, sometimes it works.
Yeah, and I think you said that somebody wanted to hire you for one of the open source projects, but they didn't because your price tag was too high.
Yeah, unfortunately, it happens. I got some of the quotations even for like a consultancy work. Yeah, I didn't get a job because it was too pricey. It wasn't that high. Like it was normal, regular price, but that's not what they expect.
And if I'm not wrong, they approach you for implementing or working with your own library, right? And then wouldn't offer you enough money.
Exactly. It was about the CryptoSwift. The job specification was something like, I need to use CryptoSwift and do this and that in CryptoSwift. Who can do that? It's like, yeah, I can do that, but I didn't win. So.
I think this is a similar scenario in also other platforms itself. Like even coming from the Android side, I know a lot of the developers would put out free applications and sometimes open source it too. And then they need to monetize it, some way of sustaining their developer career, right? So what they would do is that they would kind of put advertisements in place or something like that. And as soon as they do that, their Play Store ratings would go down because they are just trying to sustain themselves. They are trying to live or make a career out of it. So it is a weird balance to have being an open source developer as well as like trying to monetize it, creating a career.
Personally, I don't know any open source developer like per se who works just out of the open source. I implemented this OpenPGP, that's ObjectivePGP, that is OpenPGP. 2 years ago, there was a story in the press that the creator of GNU-PG, which is the most widely used implementation of PGP, everyone used that. He asked for money because he didn't have money to continue development. it doesn't seems right.
No, you build a project like that and you hope that people will fund it. But that's where the commercial world comes in and says, well, if you want us to fund it, we want to own it.
Yeah, and that's interesting. That two scenarios that may happen with that. One, they fork. If you license on a MIT or something, they could just hard fork. And if they have enough resources, they will maybe the fork, they will develop internally and release that as a different product because they can. And what do you do? Nothing. Or they may ask you to work for them. That's better for you. Mm-hmm. But that's not really. Sometimes there are funds that will pay you for some work. It happened to me with one project. So there was a fund that asked, okay, we will pay you if you implement that because we need that for one of our company or something. And I said, fine. And that was the example of great work. It was like enough for a few months of regular work, but it just happened once. So
in a rare case, somebody comes along and says, I love your open source project. I want to buy out your open source project.
Yeah,
that's rare, but it happens.
That's rare.
It's actually happened with me. I have an open source project, which, as you were mentioning, with the license and everything. So initially it was at Apache 2.0 version license. People were forking it, yes. And then at some point I found out they were not crediting back, and obviously there's nothing involved in the payout. So eventually I had to switch to a different license, which is the AGPL license P3. And then at this time, someone reached out and said, like, I want to buy this because I can't see, I cannot get the result or value out of this, right? So that has happened. But considering these situations, because we're also talking about licenses and some of these challenges, what would, in your experience, would be some of the ways of fixing this issue or problem in the open source ecosystem?
I think the license like MIT and BSD shouldn't be the default license on GitHub. Default should be GPL. We may hate GPL, but it has this good way that if it is GPL, the company won't use that without asking you. So there's GPL and another license, like dual license. In my opinion, that works the best for the creator.
What is it about GPL that, I'm sorry, what is it about GPL that people tend to react to?
I believe the discussion about GPL is very political at that point.
It is. There's a tricky clause that basically says if you make changes, you have to put it back into the upstream.
Oh, right.
And that's the tricky one where companies don't want to do, as Marcin was talking about. They would fork it, they will internally develop it, and they will put it out. But rather, GPL forces them to push it back to upstream, which companies don't want to do.
Shows you how long it's been since I've looked at the GPL license.
It's contagious. Yeah, so it says that if you get this, you have to publish your source code as well. And no company likes that.
No,
if they don't like that, why you should like that? Nobody should like that if the company that makes money out of it doesn't like that. But of course, there's the question whether if the project is licensed on a GPL, it will get that lot, that traction, the same traction or not, because that's the factor as well.
I tell you, a lot of the other problem that you face in the open source community, even with GPL and MIT, is if they don't, you mentioned it, they didn't give me credit, so I yelled at them and they said, okay, we'll give you credit. It's you against a major corporation.
Of course.
And they can lawyer up against you easily. So it's hard
Yep.
even on certain licenses to enforce them against a larger company.
Oh, definitely. Then you the only option you as a small developer have, you go to press, and if you get some attention from there, yeah, you have some chance to get something out of it. But normally, yeah, they would just ignore you. The big corporation like Amazon, or I don't know, Apple, IBM, Microsoft, they still work all the time, and if they they get cut, they will admit. We have this discussion. I don't know what was the true, but there was a discussion about the package manager in Windows a few months ago.
Yes.
Yeah, the guy said basically they steal my work because they asked me to interview for a job. I told them everything, and they turned me down. And after a few months, they release the product that works just the same. And he asked, "How okay is that?" But what do you do?
Let's change gear and talk about some of the things that impacted you. You said that you didn't really have any specific titles of books that reached out to you, but you do read a lot of biographical books, because it's
Yes.
all about the people.
Yeah, it's all about the people. I was never into science fiction. I don't know. The only author I read was Stanisław Lem, which is Polish. I don't know, science fiction writer. He's dead already, but he was like I don't know if you know Lem or not, but he was a visionary at some point. But I think that's the only author I read anytime. Other than that, I read fiction. Sorry, not non-fiction. This English term about non-fiction is so it's just reality, reportage or something. Yeah, so I read that. I read biography, so something that happened, so I can learn from actual people, how people behave, how they were thinking about what was the reality. Like now, I'm listening to, because I'm listening audiobook, the Einstein biography by Isaac. I'm not good at names. Isaacson. I think Isaacson, the author. And there's a lot of details about the times when he lived, about how he become famous, how he struggled before he invented something, how was the environment, and it was everything like today. So it was not easy. He was not just born and become a famous Einstein. He really struggled with finding a job, like paying job, before he so he can continue work on his thoughts. And only after he got the Nobel Prize, everyone suddenly started to welcome him. Everyone, although there was a war, so he was a Jew, so it wasn't easy anyway. But yeah, it's fascinating to just read that. Normally, you just know some surface of these people that it says you nothing. You just know the accomplishments, but they struggle like anyone else. Maria Curie-Skłodowska, that was about the same time as Einstein. She was, I don't know, Maria Curie-Skłodowska or not, she was the first woman that was professor of Sorbonne in France. She, with his husband, she undiscovered, what's the word, I don't know, the radiation. And she died because of that eventually. But she's super smart, but she struggled very much because she was a woman, right? That's easy. So yeah, it's fascinating me, that kind of what happens here. And I live in Europe, peaceful country. We have no war since Second War, but the wars happens all the time. If you read about Africa, let's say, well, there's very tootsie hoots. Right, really, there happens a lot of bad things to other people. We just don't know about it, and that's something you won't get in the news. This is why I.
You said that as a result, you try to be very respectful of people, and I can appreciate that very much. And that definitely extends into writing code, in understanding that everybody's going to come at that from a different direction.
Yes, that's one of my principles. Although I'm kind guy and everything, I have opinions, and there's also this thing that I'm Polish, and we have we communicate in a certain way, like very direct and so on and so forth. That translate to my communication, to my online communication as well. And I know that sometimes, even though I'm very respectful for everyone's work, but I do have opinion. And if I'm direct, people from US misunderstand me, like in my opinion. You know, they just get it to I'm rude or something. Although I'm not, I don't want to. Sometimes it's just a language barrier. The English is not my first language, and I just miss the words or some, I don't know, idioms or some constructions, phrases that may sound softer. And my language is direct, so I translate sometimes one-to-one, and it may me sound different than I originally thought. But yeah, but my approach is like, do whatever you want as long as it does the job. If you, like, I don't know, Git, this versioning system. If you use a command line, that's fine. What happened, I use command line, but if you don't feel comfortable with that, don't use that. Use the tower or whatever, like GUI client, because that's comfortable for you, and that's like, who am I to judge you? Like, as long as it works, why? Of course, we all have our opinions about like singletons or whatever, so there will be discussion. But
VI and Emacs.
Yeah, Vim, obviously.
See, there's a strong opinion one way.
That
yeah, I never use Emacs. But yeah, if we work on the same document, I would never force you to work with a VI, because there's no point. And yeah, this is my point of view. We all comes from a different backgrounds, different culture. As long as we have the same goal, we can use the different tools to reach that goal.
And you said that you try to extend that goal of respect even when you're looking at your own older code.
Oh yeah, like I'm unforgivable for my code. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when I read my old code, of course, if I know that it's my code, I'm always like, Jesus, right? Like, everyone has this moment. Happened. It was total eclipse. Happened back then. But I used to work with a lot of legacy code that was written decades ago. Even like, I'm not talking about this iOS era, but in a Microsoft era, it was really old code that works. And even though I may touch the surface because I investigate some bug and I think, okay, it doesn't work. But, you know, more time I spend, I sometimes realize, okay, they were right. I just don't understand. They had a reason to do that this way. And yeah, I was the stupid one, not there. So
I've always,
Yeah,
I've always had the general belief of it seemed like a good idea at the time.
yeah.
at that time.
Uh, of, of course, though sometimes there were bad decisions, so we may want to fix that, and we fixed like the code base is a living organism.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the assumption that something was bad by definition only because it was written 10 years ago is not necessarily good presumption.
Considering that you have a considerable experience working with this technical depth, what would be a certain strategy or approach that you would recommend for other people who would be in a similar situation?
Be humble, because the people before you were as smart as you are. So it's the rewrite is not the ultimate answer to solving bugs. We're here to do something. We have some constraints, and we have to work with the tools we have. So if the tool is to fix, not rewrite, we just fix, not rewrite. If we have to rewrite, well, think twice before you do that. Not everything that was written by you father, no, I'm just kidding, but somebody older by you is bad because they didn't use the newest package or newest architecture. Mm-hmm. Time changes, but some ideas remain the same.
Yeah, I've seen this happen a lot. Like the first intuition people have whenever they look at some old code is that let's rewrite everything, start from scratch.
Yeah, I have two as well, like everyone does. But this is only because we don't understand what's going on, and it's easier to understand if we write it by our own. It takes time to understand the logic behind the tool we started to use. So it's natural. Maybe some parts really deserve to, for the fresh start. Because I left comments in my own code, like something like, "Oh, this is very ugly." So hoping that somebody smarter than me come in and will fix that. that's the great place to rewrite this piece of code.
Especially when you're the one who comes back and goes, "Well, I hope I'm smarter than I was now."
Yeah.
So let's shift gears for a minute and talk about the fact that we're all pretty much working remotely at this point, and I hope that you are staying healthy through all of this. How is COVID lockdown for you?
Yeah, it's good. I don't have an animal in my room like you do, but so
I've got one hiding just off camera that's actually alive.
Yeah, so maybe I'm better than you then. Well, I'm fine. Although, well, I work remotely for a couple of years already, and this last year was different. This is not a remote work I know. This is like a really lockdown. So the fact that I cannot move from my home is different than the fact I don't want to move. I like when I work remotely, I not necessarily work from home, because I like to work from the cafe, one place. I'm going out to somewhere, or I rent the office for some time, like this co-working places. Mm-hmm. So I changed the environment, and it helps a lot. But now I have to redecorate my apartment to find the place where I can for sure be, like have a place to work that I didn't otherwise. So it's different now.
So the change of environment, the change of environment makes it a little more able to tolerate.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, like going out just I visit a lot of places where I know I can go with the laptop and work, sometimes meet other people that work remotely as well or not, but just, just go somewhere and on my own terms and work from there. It's refreshing. Yeah, everyone needs, I believe everyone needs this change of environment. Even different view from the window is, can unblock you. Like now I have this wall and that's nothing. I have this window, but it's dark mostly. So that's not really fun. That's not the remote work.
Yeah. I think the fact that you are also like forced to work from home versus of like having the choice of choosing, if you want to go out or not is also contributing to this. But do you think that
they force me to wear a mask? I will never. Right? They just said you're not allowed to. They will.
But do you think this affects productivity? Like considering the pre-COVID times and now, do you have seen like a change in your productivity, or is it something has changed around you, like more or less?
It does. In my example, it does. I don't know why. Well, there's a lot of factors. I guess now it's winter time, so it's dark by 4 or something. I have to stay at home all day. I have no like a place to go and unwind myself. I'm very tired of all this situation. So I'm focused on work that much that I'm close to burnout, although I'm not doing that much. So that shouldn't happen.
So we hopefully are getting into the home stretch. We have vaccines that are beginning to come out. Do you think that this is going to become more of the norm for a lot of corporations? Do you think that they're going to see value in keeping people remote, and once that freedom to move around a bit comes out?
That's interesting. I don't know. I hope so. The company I work for now, the Rover, we switch from the office to remote during this pandemic. And I think it works great for everyone. But as a company, everyone needed this push, a little push, to try this remote work. So the small companies, startups mostly, well, the small companies easy will get to remote. The big companies, well, I don't know, even though Google say you can work from home for the next year or something, they will back to office, I think, because this is too big.
September, I think they said. Until September 2021, I think they have said that you have to work remote, and then it becomes flexible.
Yeah. I don't know how, they may say now, but eventually they will back to the old habits. I think this is the case for the big companies anyway, unless they will find that this is cheaper. If this is cheaper, they will continue. If not, they will not.
The large corporations like the Amazon and Apple and Google have their campuses, which is a whole bunch of real estate that they put a lot of investment into. So the question is, well, how do they either walk away from that investment, or how do they remonetize that investment, or do they just wind up trying to push people back into it? So there's that.
Yeah, exactly. So they have their own interests to not go remote. And also, the remote work is not for everyone. Not everyone enjoy remote work. Some people really enjoy work at the office and just feel miserable when work from home, and that's fine. And they should have the environment to be productive as well. So maybe some mixed setup. Maybe it will open to some remote work more than before, but I don't think it will switch to remote fully.
Now, you also commented when it comes to the office that you have your likes and your dislikes, and the open office. Here is a table that is not very well liked on your platform.
Yeah. Do you like OpenOffice?
No, I despise it. But then again, I joke that my
There's some
career has
people.
been. I joke that my career has been going backwards because when I was a junior, I had a closed office with windows. And then as I progressed, there was a closed office with windows, a closed office, an open office with it was shared with and by the time I was done, I didn't even have a table. I just had, set your desk up wherever.
Hot desk. Oh, I hate it. I had a hot desk setup. Yeah, I'm not a fan of OpenOffice. Uh, well, it's too noisy. Basically, it doesn't work as they think they work. So we work in headphones, and we just do everything to isolate from everyone else. Although it has the good side is that you together you can go out for a lunch together.
Mm.
So like if that be a closed office, like a room, yeah, that's fine. Room with 2-3 coworkers, yeah, that's fine. But the total complete open space is, I think it will change, and I hope the companies eventually understand that it doesn't work. I asked that once I was at the Facebook office in London, just a tour, and I asked, this is a huge open space. How do you feel about it? Like, do you feel productive or not? And the answer was, oh, this is a company policy. We believe that open source, open space, and blah 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 blah. I don't know, right? Maybe it works for some.
See, one of the things I like about remote work is that I'm surrounded by me. And by that, what I mean is I've got my books, my inspirational poster, which in this case is a picture of Jim Henson, window, a lamp, a picture of my family. And the idea of the open office is that I can't bring that little bit of me to the table. I can bring work to the table, and I'm no longer me. I'm just simply a human resource.
Yep. We are blue collars. So
I always thought the best term was for programmers, we're no collars.
yeah.
I think I personally am on both sides. I'm fine going back to the office because I'm so done with the current setup. I initially liked this, but now that it's ongoing for like months now, and now I'm like, I want to go back to the office. I don't know. I don't care about remote work anymore. But initially, I was definitely very much interested. It's also become a thing now that people are saying that we have shown that remote work actually works. So, which is a big thing because earlier it's always been a debate on, say, Twitter or some platform. But now it's actually visible that remote work works. So I'm hoping things would get better. It becomes more flexible. People have choices of either going to work or just working from home.
Yeah, and this is good shift. Give that choice to the employee, whether you want to work as you want, even if the policy is 1 day at the office just to meet the team. And I think it's fair to ask if you live in the same city, of course. But give that option. Yeah, you have to focus. Yeah, focus in your home at your desk. But this 1 day we have this meetings or something, and just come over, and that's fine. I believe that's fair.
Yeah, I like having my own time system. But then again, I was working remotely before forced remote began. And for me, being near a major city, it cuts out 45 minutes in each direction of travel time. And that travel time is, I mean, if I'm driving, it's wasted time because I'm paying attention to the road. If it's commuting, then it's potentially work or my time, but it's tamped down. It's not me being fully effective. So I like having that hour and a half to basically take care of my things or my family or have an extra hour for work so that I can adjust my schedule.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah, the commute time is a big factor. I like sleep long, in the morning, so that's always a problem.
That's one part where I'm actually happy about remote work. You get to sleep. You don't have. You can use your commute time for sleeping, which is great.
Yeah.
I'm awesome for that.
I wish I could. I've got half a team that's in India, so I'm actually getting up at 6 a.m. so that I can interact with our India team.
we can't fix time zones.
Yeah, we can't fix time zones. Time zones would be wonderful if we could just somehow slip things half a day.
That's true.
But it's nice because that way I can work instead of 9 to 5. I can work 6 to 2 or earlier.
Yeah, I have a setup. I work in the evenings. I like now and previously I work with the States team or Canadian team. So the time zone is shift in a way that my afternoon they start work. So yeah, I'm already. So we have some overlap in hours, enough for meetings and communicate. But we don't have to overlap all the hours, and I think it works. It works for me at least.
Which time zone are they in?
East Coast, which is
Okay.
I don't know.
Is it Toronto, Canada?
Yes. Yes.
Have you been out to the Toronto? Have you been out to the Toronto area?
I haven't yet.
Absolutely beautiful city to walk around.
I heard so. I have to go there. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. If my CEO is listening to this podcast.
That's it. So as soon, and we'll vouch for you here. As soon as COVID restrictions lift, they need to shift you out and let you visit the office.
Definitely. Well, there's no office, but we moved to remote. The whole company moved to remote. To visit every member, each member of the company that is spread out around Canada now. So I have great visit, great tour of the Canada.
Nice.
Yeah. So I was gonna maybe move gears a little bit in the direction where I have seen, and I also get a lot of questions on this, is that we have been seeing a lot of shift in the industry for a couple of years now. And what is happening is that in the industry, the developers are kind of progressing and they're getting promotions and everything, but they still see a ceiling at which they cannot just cross. They just maybe become a senior engineer. So what is your particular feeling around how is this progress for developers? Why do they find it so hard to progress in their career?
I wish I know the answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's famous that in our industry, if you want to get promotion, you change a company, right? That's kind of a thing. It shouldn't be like that, but it is. I don't know how it is in other industries. It may be the same. I don't know. I just didn't work. I just think it's not that common. In IT, you work 2 or 3 years. If you don't get any promotion, you change job, so you get a better money, even if you keep the same level of seniority.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't get promoted.
There really is no promotion to stay as an engineer once you're effectively senior or lead.
Yeah. So big companies, they come up with these levels, kind of you become a staff engineer or something, level 5, 6, 7, and you get different compensation based on that. So this is kind of, I guess, promotion. Because otherwise, you start as a junior, and after 2 years, you're senior, because it depends on the company. But if you're like a software house, what do you say to your clients? we hire juniors? No, we only hire senior developers. Also, the rate for the senior developer is different than the junior developer. So it's obvious. You become a senior, and what next? You stay as a senior because there's nothing else. You can become a manager, probably. But yeah, yes or not. That company, like if it's a small company, become a manager is a huge thing because you like next to a CEO or something, like on a very high level. In a big company, it's different. They may have smaller teams when they form this management, the lower level management that also works. If that works for somebody, of course, like for not for everyone. Become an engineer is a thing. Did any of you ever had this opportunity to work as a manager?
No, not me. I don't know about Drew.
I'm effectively an architect now, which is
Oh,
a managing developer.
Okay.
architect. That's the interesting. Yeah, tell me
Yeah,
about
that's
being
the title where that's the title where they expect that you can code, but they never let you code because you're in meetings.
That's where the line gets blurry. It's like you're going into management almost.
Yeah, that sounds right. You're almost manager, but you're architect.
What do you prefer, Marcin? Like, do you wanna like jump into management or something, or do you like see yourself more or less as being a lead engineer?
Yeah, as you said, being a lead is, I think, a most comfortable position for me. Not really being a manager. I don't really stand the politics too much, so I may be hard to being a great manager on that level. But being a lead, yeah, I have enough seniority and experience to work with a small team and work on the problem, but still on the engineering level. I think I don't know for how long. At some point, I may need to become a manager.
Some
I
point.
don't know. I hope it will never happen. No.
You're always afraid about it.
Just keep hoping that you become senior engineer JL5 or something like that, or
Yeah.
magic numbers.
Yeah, because like they have some companies have this term of the position independent contributor. I think that's so
Yes,
you're
I've also
senior
seen those.
enough, yeah, but you're not a manager, but you're like a professor or PhD or something on a university, work on your own, and that would be great.
You
Basically,
hold.
they just run out of positions, I would say, right? That's when you become an independent contributor.
Do
Yeah.
you, Machin? Do you hold a degree?
Yeah, I hold a degree in management.
Awesome. It circles back.
Yeah, I'm a master degree. I have a master degree in management, which is I despise. But this is I learn a lot on a theory level of management. It stays something still in my head, and I liked that. But that's not something I would enjoy in my daily work. There's not enough building. I'm a builder guy. There's not enough, touching things, like being the creator. That's not the management work. I think because the management may have a different opinion on that.
Yeah. And do you think that there's something in the industry that has changed over a period of time because you have such a like good experience of working in this industry? Do you think there are some things that have kind of like changed over a period of time?
Yeah, that's in, of course, the complexity of like everything now comparing to 20 years ago or something is different. The last dot bubble was what, the year 2000, right? The dot-com thing. I think it was about
Yeah.
The
about
bubble or the
2000.
blast?
Both. Yeah, the blast was, the dot-com was, the blast was about 2000. Yeah, I think so, like 20 years ago. And if you look at the technology back then and today, it's completely different. Although the people from that era still, of course, are in the industry, right? And it's fine if if people work and see the difference. It's not really fair if they measure, I don't know, current requirements by what they had to know when they started work. You know, in the 2000, you to build a website, you had to know Perl, probably, on the server side, and HTML, some JS, right? CSS, even not even. Now, think about it, like Docker, Kubernetes, of course, 2 or 3 JavaScript frameworks, CSS, 2, 3, HTML, it's like nothing now. You know, the complexity is way, way bigger than it was before. And I don't think anyone still keep track of what's going on with all the stack. It used to be a LAMP or something, Linux, Apache, MySQL,
Well, and PHP.
and
PHP,
PHP,
yeah.
right? Right, it was
Because
enough.
I used to do MAMP, which was
And,
Mac Apache.
yeah.
Okay, I'm
Now-
on the LAMP side.
Now, you said one of the problem with Kubernetes is the fact that it's an abstraction on top of Docker, and you're not fond of the abstractions upon abstractions.
Yeah, well, it is an abstraction in a sense that if you build a system where you have a server, application server on one machine, database on another machine, I don't know, something else, controller on another machine, then you have like 4 machines, and this is where Kubernetes comes in and build this system, right? But for the development, most of the time, you don't need that, because for the development environment, you really need one machine and run all this process in a single environment. You just change that for the release, but that's a different job. For the release, you do the proper configuration. But for development, the Docker is most of the time, simple Docker is enough. Although some say the Docker is not even needed. It depends on your environment, of course. And I can back to the Swift on server discussion. You know, if you develop on Mac and you try to do Swift on Mac, it's different. The Swift runtime is different on the Mac and on Linux. So you have to deploy and test and run the application on Linux. And this is where the Docker, you know, helps you. Because there's no sense to build an application on macOS, because it will behave differently on Linux once you deploy that. Yeah, but the Docker is a one layer, and I believe it should be enough for anyone. Recently, I had to run some application that asked me to run the project that is called something like single node Kubernetes. Oh no, it was Kubernetes, but shrink to just one node that can run on my machine. That is not the purpose of Kubernetes at all. But that's the setup.
Kind of overdoing it there.
Yeah.
I'm curious, because you also talk about the overcomplication of computer languages and how that's getting messy. Do you feel that that the reactive frameworks that Apple turned out recently are overcomplications, or do you feel that they are something new and a good decision? What I'm talking about is, you know, like Swift UI and Combine and.
It's interesting. It's interesting, actually. because it's abstraction layer, like this combined Swift and Eric's Cocoa, all that projects from our field. It's abstraction that play quite well, I would say. I mean, it simplifies a lot of things. The more I play with the Swift UI, I more like it. However, this is only because I know how it was before, and I know how it works out underneath. So what drives that simplicity that is on the surface? Otherwise, if I only knew the Swift UI, for me, that would be not enough. I would need to go somewhere deeper to understand. Because like Swift UI is a language DSL to express the layout, let's say, right? Describe it like that. But you don't know about the animation that drives that, right? The SA animation framework, core animation. You don't know about all the layers that comes into play. So if something is off, something doesn't work, there's a performance issue, you lost. You just don't know what happened. And this is where the knowledge, the lower level knowledge, experience comes into play. I'm in the good position, like all of us, that we came through all the stages. There was Objective-C, and we know what the UI view is, how it works, and probably why the Swift UI is slower here and there, because we always can check was that. But there are people who starting now today, and they only learn Swift UI, and they don't have this advantage, and it must be hard. So it's good, but it's a bit overpromised. I don't know.
I think it's a bit I think it's still a bit undeveloped. I think
it is.
I think there's more yet to come that will clean up some of that.
Yes, look, well, the Swift UI is all about a single thread programming, like the main thread, right? The same thing like in the Node.js. So if you're a programmer, you don't really have an opportunity to learn about threading issues, how to solve that, how to deal. This is a whole section of the knowledge that you just don't have an opportunity to learn about. The same if you're a Swift developer, you don't think about memory management most of the time because this happens for you. But that's not how the process works. Process has this memory pages, so address space that is translated to something that is translated to something else, and we just don't know. Nobody learned this kind of thing unless you really want to go deeper, right? If you like a script developer, you learn React or something, but you don't learn how the JavaScript virtual machine works. And I don't know if that's good. It is good to deliver products, definitely, but it's not necessarily good to understand what we're doing.
That was very good.
Interesting. A good take on the frameworks and how these abstractions are working. I mean, as you already mentioned about Node.js and other things, obviously people are not learning about the basics as much because they just want to build the app and just go forward with it. So
yeah, it works to some extent. Swift UI is great. Like I decided to rewrite some part of my old project to Swift UI because I find it easy to use. So it's great. It's really great to have it as in my tool set. So I can choose and use that to the one of the piece I need. But I wouldn't replace that everything with that yet.
No, I really think that at this point, you've got a choice of UI systems, so you can use certain UIs for certain feature sets, but I don't think they're completely interchangeable at this point. I think that there's definitely situations where you go, I need to use this UI system, I need to use this UI system.
Oh, definitely.
And of course, you've still got things like SpriteKit, SceneKit, and all of that, which is basically saying, no, go use Unreal or Unity instead.
Yeah, I don't know Unity, but I just heard it's a rich environment where you can build a lot of interesting things easily. Yeah, but that's the tool, and we learn a lot of tools along the way, and it's good to know some of it. Like with languages, we were talking about Swift, some JavaScript, Objective-C. But there's like a C, C++, I don't know, Rust is currently on top, Fortran, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of languages. Most of us, as a programmers, will pick up a new language in 2 weeks, right?
The language is easy. It's the frameworks around the languages that are hard.
Exactly. It's the framework that is hard.
I mean, I probably can pick up. I'm the iOS guy, and Nishant is an Android guy. I can pick up Kotlin without any problem. It's understanding the whole Java world around Kotlin and all of the different systems that are designed. See, I can't even come up with words.
Tooling is another issue. You know, the Kotlin is a language, of course. There's a compiler, but there's a build system that is not trivial to set up and use, right? And you get Android Studio, but you have to understand what this Gradle, or I don't know how it's...
Gradle,
how it works, why is it for, and... the same in web development, the Webpack or whatever is on currently used to generate all the boilerplate. You know, you have to be familiar with all of that and stay on top. So it's complicated.
So that's the book I need. I need Gradle for Dummies.
I would say that Gradle has a lot of different things. It has its own language. You don't want to go there. Unless you're shifting to Android development, then it is great.
But then again, I've learned how to do install scripts in Unix, so that's a language unto itself too. Let's tilt into non-tech for a few minutes here. Since you are remote, when you are not stuck at home, Marcin, what is fun? And preferably, what is fun that does not involve a keyboard?
iPad. No, I'm just kidding. Well, yeah, I have kids, so I spend some time with my family, of course, and play with the kids.
How old are they?
There's 6 and 9.
6 and 9.
Yeah, primary school. It's good age.
Great age. They're starting to become independent.
Yeah.
The 9-year-old is starting to become independent. The 6-year-old still pretty much needs help at everything.
Yeah. It's great kids, and I'm very happy with that. But yeah, other than that, I'm normal. I'm not really the party guy, like, you know, the guy who go out on Friday and back on Sunday. I was never like that. So I watch some movies, of course, but I like to go to the theater, to, I don't know, the gallery, you know, to visit. I love travel and go to the museums. I don't know, that sounds boring, but it's fun to me. So I do enjoy that kind of activity that gives me some social, I don't know, some perspective. I learn how other people think by art.
You said that you had you'd given a talk in, and I'm trying to remember where you said you gave the
Singapore.
talk. Singapore.
Singapore.
Is that the furthest you've been, or have you been to the States?
I've been to States. I don't know what is the further. States or Singapore from Europe. Both.
Oh, I guess Singapore is fairly close because you're not crossing the ocean there.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I was in Asia. I wasn't in India, but I don't know where Nishant, where you from? Where you at?
I'm from New Delhi, but currently I'm in Berlin.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in Europe.
Yeah. I was in China. I was that's the Asia. I was in Russia. I love Russia and like this and countries around the whole Europe, States, and Singapore, because going to the Singapore and around is quite far. You get like 2 days just for flight, and always. So why I'm doing the talks is because of traveling. Now I always take some days off, so I stay at the place, like doing short vacations, stay there and do, walking around. Because this is also the reason why I didn't get any speaking activity in 2020. I don't feel this online format a lot. The online conference, I just didn't feel well in that format. I know some people feel otherwise. But yeah, I hope the next year I will find somebody will ask me to give some talk, and I'm happy to go. So if there's anyone who is looking for
who's listening right now, and
who's listening.
Don't worry, we'll even give your Twitter at the end of the talk.
Oh, I also heard that Ray Wenderlich has a great conference in the States. I will happy to go.
Ray hasn't done the conference for a few years, but hopefully once conference season comes back, we may see a return of the RayWenderlich.com conference. RW DevCon was quite a lot of fun. I spoke at that one myself. Let's see. Is there anything else anyone wants to touch upon? Because we've gone about an hour and a half.
Yeah, I have one unique question. So I saw on your website that you have this, I think you built a game on using J2ME framework or something.
Yeah.
That was for mobile phones and palm tops, I think. But but once you did that, I think that's the only one. Once you did that, then you probably moved into iOS development. Is this because you didn't like the Java platform or what?
I like Java platform. Although the J2ME was different. It was very small subset of Java that can run on this Siemens or something, these phones.
Yes,
yeah, so that was a good experience. It was exercise to build a Tetris kind of game that will fit in the memory. It will be small, and the binary is like 7 kilobytes or something, and it works. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. I think the binary is still there. Maybe somebody still ran that. I got some in the past. I got some feedback that it works here and there, but I didn't really track what's going on with it.
Hopefully, one of our listeners just puts it in some sort of J2ME emulator and tries to run it.
Yeah,
it's open source.
Yeah, I did some, in general, I did some Java development as well in past. Of course, I'm the kind of person that try to use the tool that is right for the job. I also did a Perl backend development. I had this great gig that was reverse engineer. I had to reverse engineer the Photoshop picture format that is in a header. It's called 8-beam, I think. And Photoshop, you know that?
I've seen 8-beam before.
Yeah, so I didn't know, it was undocumented at the time at least, but I worked in press company, and
I think
I had this task to build a system that index pictures, and the pictures had the metadata in this 8-beam format. So I spent like 2 weeks just looking at the bits and trying to figure out what's going on, what's the format. And I eventually built a Perl module that will parse that. And so I can use that in a server. It was fun. I like that kind of task.
I see you used Perl language, so pretty unique. I would never touch it.
I don't remember now. You know, if you ever knew Perl, you know that you can remember syntax for like a week or two. If you don't use it, you just don't.
Like regex, you remember only for your task.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
My wife did Perl, and she always used to do all the obfuscated Perl. So it was just commands munched together into this block of gibberish to begin with.
There was a competition. I think it was called Golf Perl or something. It was how short, how little letters you can write and still have a proper
working Perl program. Yeah.
Yeah. That was fun.
Those are interesting ones.
Marcin, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. This episode was a lot of fun, very informative, especially when it came down to a lot of the CryptoSwift stuff. I was just really fascinated to learn about some of the problems that you face trying to get that to work. If you want to talk to Marcin directly, you can get him on Twitter, and I'm going to spell it rather than say it because it's now check me if I'm wrong on this. KRZYZANOWSKI M for Marcin.
That's very good. This is Kryzanowski. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I had a really great time talking to you. Yeah, it was great. I still didn't say a word about my project SwiftStudio, but this is for the next time.
Oh, absolutely. We'll definitely bring you back and talk about IDEs that are available and that are being made. Nishant, you can find on Twitter at Nisrulz, NISRULZ. I am Podcast Dru. Next episode, and again, I'm going to try to do this without mangling it, Moyanulua Adeyemi is going to be on. And if you have any questions for him, please write us at podcast@raywenderlich.com. That's going to wrap things up. We'll have that episode in 2 weeks. Until then, we're going to head back to the Emerald Castle. Ray, back to you.
And that's a wrap. Thanks again, everybody, for listening to the raywenderlich.com podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to leave a rating on iTunes. See you next time.